Touch that maid again, and this entire house will answer to me. 12 hours earlier, no one at Blackwood Manor would have believed those words could ever be spoken for Emily Carter. To the guests filling the marble ballroom, she was invisible, another poorly paid servant carrying silver trays beneath chandeliers worth more than she would earn in a lifetime. Emily had spent 3 years working 16-hour days to keep a roof over her younger sister's head, and tonight's private gala promised enough overtime to cover the electric bill before the summer heat settled over Virginia. All she had to do was serve quietly, avoid the vampire nobles, and leave before midnight. Then she saw Senator Whitmore collapse beside the west balcony. His crystal glass slipped from his hand and shattered across the polished floor. While the wealthy guests stepped back in alarm, Emily set down her tray and hurried toward him. She checked his breathing, loosened his collar, and called for the manor physician. That was when Victor Hale, the head steward, appeared from the crowd. "What did you give him?" he demanded. Emily stared at him. "Nothing. I found him like this." Victor's expression did not change, but something cold entered his eyes. He reached into the pocket of her apron and withdrew a tiny silver bottle Emily had never seen before. A dark liquid moved behind the glass. The ballroom fell silent. "Poison," someone whispered. Emily's stomach dropped. "That isn't mine." "Of course it is," Victor said smoothly. "You were standing beside him, and now we find this on you." The manor physician arrived and knelt beside the senator, but Victor barely glanced at him. He had already decided where the room's attention belonged. On the maid. On the easiest person to blame. 2 guards moved closer. Emily stepped back, clutching the old pendant beneath her uniform, the only thing her mother had left her. "Check the security cameras," she said. Her voice shook, but she forced herself to meet Victor's gaze. "Search my locker. Ask anyone who worked with me tonight. I didn't do this." A few human employees looked away. The vampire guests watched with detached curiosity, as though her fear were simply another form of entertainment. Victor leaned closer. "People like you do not make demands in this house." He ordered the guards to take her below stairs until the king returned. The moment one guard touched Emily's wrist, her pendant turned hot against her skin. A golden light slipped through the fabric of her uniform, bright enough to make everyone freeze. Somewhere deep beneath the manor, ancient locks released one after another. The chandeliers trembled. Every candle went dark. Then a heartbeat sounded through the walls, slow, powerful, and impossibly old. 300 miles away, Vampire King Alexander Blackwood opened his silver eyes and spoke a name he had not heard in 2 centuries. Emily. Alexander Blackwood had not heard Emily Carter's name with his ears. The ancient oath beneath his skin had whispered it directly into his mind. Golden light spread across his wrist, forming a crown encircled by thorns, a symbol that had remained dormant since the winter of 1824. He rose from the head of the conference table in Richmond, leaving 12 executives silent behind him. "Prepare the car," he ordered. His chief guard glanced at the glowing mark. "Your Majesty, Blackwood Manor is nearly 300 miles away." Alexander's silver eyes darkened. "Then make certain the road remembers who owns it." Back at the manor, Emily stood beneath the dead chandeliers while the guards slowly released her arms. The walls continued to pulse with that impossible heartbeat. Dust drifted from the ceiling. A sealed door at the far end of the ballroom unlocked with a deep metallic click, revealing a passage no servant had ever seen. Victor Hale stared at Emily's pendant as if it were something he had spent years fearing. "Cover it," he snapped. "Take her downstairs now." No one moved. The vampire guests were no longer watching Emily with amusement. They were watching her with caution. Several lowered their heads, though none seemed to understand why. Emily pressed her palm over the golden light beneath her uniform. "What is happening to me?" Victor stepped closer, forcing calm into his voice. "A trick. Nothing more." "Then why are you afraid?" Emily asked. The question landed harder than a shout. Victor's expression tightened. Before he could answer, the manor physician rose from Senator Whitmore's side. "He is breathing normally," she announced. "There is no sign that Miss Carter gave him anything." She lifted the senator's glass with a folded cloth. A faint silver residue clung to its rim. Whatever caused his collapse was placed in his drink before she reached him. Murmurs spread across the ballroom. Victor immediately pointed toward Emily. "She served the table." "No," said another maid from the edge of the room. Her name was Grace Miller, and she looked terrified, but she did not look away. Victor changed the serving assignments 10 minutes before the senator arrived. Emily was assigned to the East Gallery. Emily remembered it then. Victor had personally ordered her into the ballroom moments before the collapse. He had also bumped against her near the service corridor, close enough to slip a bottle into her apron. The truth formed slowly, coldly. She had not been chosen because she was guilty. She had been chosen because no one important would defend her. Headlights swept across the tall windows. Every vampire in the room became still. Outside, black vehicles rolled through the iron gates without slowing. The front doors opened before anyone touched them, and a freezing wind moved through the ballroom. Alexander entered alone. He wore a dark suit, rain shining across his shoulders, and his face was paler than winter stone. He did not look at the senator. He did not look at the council members bowing around him. His gaze found Emily immediately. The golden mark on his wrist blazed in answer to her pendant. For one suspended second, the powerful vampire king looked shaken. Then he turned toward Victor. "Who?" Alexander asked softly. "Gave you permission to touch the woman under my protection?" Victor Hale lowered his head, but the movement came a second too late. Alexander noticed the fear in his eyes, the hesitation in his breathing, and the faint scent of old magic clinging to his gloves. "Your Majesty," Victor said carefully. "The maid was found beside Senator Whitmore with poison in her apron. I acted to protect this house." Alexander walked toward him without hurry. That made the room more afraid than anger would have. "You acted before the physician examined the senator. You ordered the cameras ignored. You attempted to remove Emily after the royal seal awakened." Victor's face tightened. "Her name was never given to you." Silence swept across the ballroom. Emily felt every gaze turned toward her, but Alexander continued looking only at Victor. "No," he said. "It was not." He lifted his wrist, revealing the golden crown burning beneath his pale skin. Emily's pendant answered with a warm pulse against her chest. The sealed passage behind them opened another inch, and a breath of cold air carried the scent of cedar, dust, and something ancient. Alexander turned to Emily. His voice softened, though its authority remained. "May I see the pendant?" No one had asked her permission since the accusation began. That simple courtesy steadied her more than any promise could have. Emily drew the chain from beneath her uniform and placed the small silver pendant in her palm. Its surface had changed. The plain oval she had worn since childhood now displayed a crown surrounded by 7 stars. Alexander stopped breathing. "Where did you get this?" "It belonged to my mother," Emily said. "She told me it came from her grandmother. That is all I know." Alexander reached toward it, then paused before touching her hand. When Emily gave a small nod, his fingertips brushed the pendant. Golden light raced across the ballroom floor and formed a circle around them. Images flickered inside it like reflections on dark water. A snow-covered road. A wounded stranger in an old military coat. A young woman wrapping him in a wool blanket while lanterns burned in the distance. Alexander closed his eyes. "Abigail Carter," he whispered. Emily stared at him. "That was my great-great-grandmother's name. She saved my life in 1824, Alexander said. "I swore that her bloodline would never stand alone while I remained in this world." Councilwoman Evelyn Cross stepped forward from among the guests, her crimson gown whispering across the marble. "An oath of protection does not prove innocence." Emily turned toward her. "Then the evidence should." Her fear had not vanished, but something stronger now stood beside it. "Check the serving records. Check the hallway cameras. Test Victor's gloves for the same residue found on the senator's glass." Victor took one step backward. Alexander saw it. So did everyone else. Grace Miller suddenly raised her hand from the servants' line. "I saw him near the west pantry," she said. "He was holding the senator's glass before the gala began." Victor's calm expression finally cracked. "She is lying." "Then you will welcome an investigation," Alexander replied. The great doors closed behind him with a final, echoing sound. "No one leaves this manor." His silver eyes shifted toward the secret passage, where the darkness seemed to be waiting for Emily. Because someone did not merely try to frame a maid tonight. Someone tried to silence the only woman who can open what my enemies have feared for 200 years. The investigation began before the last echo faded from the ballroom. Alexander ordered the security staff to seal every entrance, preserve every recording, and collect the senator's glass, Victor's gloves, and the silver bottle from Emily's apron. No accusations. No spectacle. Only facts. That quiet, disciplined, unsettled Victor more than rage ever could. Emily watched him from beside the hidden passage, noticing how often his eyes drifted toward the darkness beyond the open door. He was not afraid of Alexander. He was afraid of what Emily might find. The manor physician returned several minutes later with a portable testing case. A pale blue light passed over the evidence, revealing the same silver residue on the glass, the bottle, and the fingertips of Victor's right glove. The room filled with whispers. Victor straightened his coat. Someone planted it there. That was your explanation for the bottle found on Emily, Alexander said. It appears less convincing when applied to you. Grace Miller stepped forward again, holding a tablet from the service office. The updated staff schedule showed Emily assigned to the East Gallery until 11:45 that evening. Victor had changed her location 7 minutes before Senator Whitmore collapsed. He had entered the West Pantry twice during the same period, although he had claimed he never left the ballroom. The evidence formed a chain. Each link pointed toward him. Still, Emily felt no satisfaction, only a growing unease. "Why frame me?" she asked. Victor's gaze settled on her pendant. "You were supposed to leave quietly." Alexander moved between them. "Explain." Victor gave a humorless smile. "You still believe this is about the senator?" Before anyone could stop him, he spoke a phrase in an ancient language. The hidden passage answered. Stone shifted beneath the floor, and a deep bell sounded somewhere below the manor. The golden mark on Emily's pendant flared so brightly that she closed her eyes. When she opened them, Victor was standing beside Councilwoman Evelyn Cross. Evelyn had removed the surprise from her face. In its place was cold certainty. "The chamber recognizes the Carter bloodline," she said. "We only needed her close enough to awaken it." Several council members stepped away from her. Alexander's expression became still. "You poisoned a senator and accused an innocent woman merely to open a door." "The senator was never in danger," Evelyn replied. "The substance caused temporary weakness. The maid would have been dismissed, the chamber would have awakened, and we would have taken what belonged to the council." Emily looked into the passage. Small golden lights now burned along the walls, descending toward a sealed vault far beneath the house. "What is down there?" Alexander did not answer immediately. His silver eyes reflected the ancient light. "Proof," he finally said. "Records of every noble family that betrayed the peace agreement between humans and vampires." Evelyn's composure slipped. That was enough. Emily understood. The chamber did not contain treasure. It contained names. Victor moved toward the passage, but its entrance sealed halfway, stopping him outside while leaving a narrow path open before Emily. The manor had chosen. Alexander turned to her. "I will not order you to enter." Emily looked at the servants who had remained silent when she was accused, at Grace who had found the courage to speak, and at Victor, who had mistaken poverty for helplessness. Then she stepped toward the descending stairs. "You do not have to order me," she said. "I want the truth." Alexander followed at her side, while behind them Evelyn whispered a warning that turned the ballroom cold. "Open that vault, Emily Carter, and you will learn why your family spent 200 years hiding from the king who swore to protect them." The passage sealed behind Emily and Alexander with a sound like stone taking a final breath. Golden lamps awakened one by one along the narrow staircase, revealing walls carved with names, dates, and 7-pointed stars. The air smelled of cedar and winter dust. Emily descended carefully, one hand closed around her pendant, while Alexander walked beside her without touching her. He could hear her heartbeat racing, yet she never asked to turn back. "Did my family truly hide from you?" she asked. Alexander stared into the darkness below. "After Abigail saved me, I offered her protection. She refused wealth, land, and every title I could give. She asked for one promise instead. Her descendants would be allowed to live as ordinary people." Emily looked down at her faded uniform. "Ordinary seems generous." Regret passed through his silver eyes. "I believed leaving your family alone was the same as keeping them safe." The staircase ended nearly 60 feet beneath the manor in a circular chamber lined with locked cabinets. At its center stood a black stone table beneath a glass dome. Inside rested a leather journal and a small brass key. Emily approached, but the dome remained sealed until she placed her pendant against a crown-shaped hollow in its base. Light spread through the glass. A woman's voice filled the room, quiet and clear despite the 2 centuries between them. To the daughter of my blood who opens this chamber, forgive me. Emily froze. Alexander's face became still. The voice belonged to Abigail Carter. She explained that the peace agreement had been corrupted from within. Several noble families had secretly financed groups determined to keep humans fearful and vampires divided. Abigail had discovered their records, but one name had frightened her more than all the others. Blackwood. Emily turned toward Alexander. He did not defend himself. Open the journal, he said. The dome lifted. Emily reached for the book, and the brass key rolled toward her hand as though pulled by the pendant. The first pages listed payments, hidden meetings, and false accusations stretching across generations. Then she found Alexander's name beside a single sentence. The king knows nothing. Keep him grieving, and he will never search beneath his own house. Alexander closed his eyes. They used my silence, he said. For 200 years. A second name appeared below his. Evelyn Cross. Beside it was Victor Hale, followed by dates from the previous month and a final instruction. Locate the Carter heir before the vault opens. Emily understood why she had been hired at Blackwood Manor despite having no references. Victor had not discovered her by accident. He had brought her there. A sharp chime sounded overhead. The journal's pages began turning on their own until they stopped at a map of the manor. One room glowed red. The ballroom. Then Abigail's recorded voice returned. The vault does not merely preserve evidence. It judges those who stand above it. Alexander looked toward the ceiling as the golden symbols around them shifted from stars into warning marks. Emily, we must return now. Why? She asked. His expression turned colder than the stone walls. Because Evelyn did not remain upstairs to escape. She remained there to destroy every witness before this chamber could reveal the truth. Alexander moved first, lifting the journal from the stone table, while Emily took the brass key and followed him toward the stairs. The golden lamps flickered as the chamber trembled around them, and somewhere above, the old manor released a deep warning tone that rolled through the walls like distant thunder. Stay close, Alexander said. Emily tightened her grip on the key. I am not leaving those people up there. He glanced at her, and for the first time that night, something warmer than duty entered his expression. Neither am I. They climbed quickly, but the staircase seemed longer than before, each step narrowing as the red light from the ballroom pulsed through the stone. Halfway up, the hidden passage shuddered and stopped opening. Alexander pressed his hand against the wall. Nothing moved. Evelyn has activated the council seal, he said. She is trying to lock us below. Emily looked at the brass key. A tiny 7-pointed star had appeared along its edge. Without knowing why, she placed it into a narrow crack beside the door. The stone responded immediately. Golden symbols spread outward, breaking the red seal and forcing the passage open. Alexander stared at her. Abigail did not leave you only a record. Then let us find out what else she left. They emerged into the ballroom to find every guest and servant standing inside a circle of red light. No one was injured, but none could cross its boundary. Evelyn stood near the center with Victor beside her, both holding small silver medallions that glowed with the same color. Grace was kneeling beside Senator Whitmore, shielding him from the blinding light with her own body. When Emily appeared, Evelyn's calm finally vanished. You should have stayed below. You should have chosen someone else to frame, Emily replied. The room went silent. Alexander stepped forward, but the red circle flared. One more step, Evelyn warned, and the council seal closes permanently. Alexander stopped. Emily noticed the journal vibrating in his hand. Its cover opened by itself, and a line of gold appeared across the page. The Carter heir may speak where kings cannot. Emily understood. This was why Abigail had hidden the truth beneath the manor. A king could be silenced by law, politics, or ancient seals. A servant was often ignored until it was too late. Emily raised the brass key. Evelyn Cross, she said, her voice carrying farther than it should have. The chamber names you as a keeper who betrayed the oath of peace. The golden lights beneath the floor awakened. Evelyn's medallion dimmed. Victor looked toward the doors, but they locked before he could move. This is not justice, Evelyn said. This is old magic. No, Emily answered. The old magic only opened the record. Your choices wrote it. Alexander opened the journal to the pages listing payments and secret meetings. One by one, names appeared in gold above the ballroom floor, visible to every witness. Council members gasped as decades of deception unfolded before them. Victor's shoulders lowered. Evelyn remained standing, but the power in her seal was gone. The red circle faded, releasing the guests and servants. Alexander crossed the room and stopped beside Emily. He did not speak for her. He did not take the key from her hand. He simply stood with her while the truth finished revealing itself. Then the journal turned to one final page. A fresh sentence appeared in Abigail Carter's handwriting. The oath is fulfilled only when the king chooses the woman, not as a debt, but as his equal. Emily read the words twice. Alexander read them once. Around them, the entire ballroom waited, but the vampire king said nothing, because for the first time in 200 years, the next choice belonged entirely to his heart. No one in the ballroom moved. The final sentence hovered above the open journal in golden light, bright enough to reflect in every polished window. Emily felt the weight of hundreds of eyes, but the only gaze that mattered belonged to Alexander. He stood beside her, pale and motionless, as though centuries of command had prepared him for every crisis except this one. "You do not owe me an answer," Emily said quietly. "Not tonight. Not because of a promise. Not because of my family." A murmur moved through the council. Several nobles looked offended that a maid had spoken so plainly to their king. Alexander ignored them. "You are correct," he said. His voice carried through the room without effort. An oath can demand protection. It cannot demand trust. It cannot demand respect. And it cannot command the heart. He turned toward Evelyn and Victor. The golden names still burned above the floor. "Both of you will be held for a public hearing before the full council and human representatives at sunrise. Every accusation will be examined. Every witness will be heard." Victor lowered his head. Evelyn lifted her chin. "You would expose our court to humans?" "The peace agreement belongs to both worlds," Alexander replied. "So will the truth." He ordered the guards to escort them to secured guest rooms under watch. There was no spectacle, no cruelty, only the quiet removal of power they had abused. When the doors closed behind them, Alexander faced the ballroom. "Emily Carter was accused without evidence because too many of you believed her position made her disposable." Shame crossed several faces. The servants remained silent, but this time their silence felt different. It was not fear. It was attention. "From this moment forward," Alexander continued, "no employee of this house will be judged without an investigation, representation, and the right to speak. Rank will not replace truth." Emily looked toward Grace, who gave her a small, relieved smile. Senator Whitmore was now sitting upright with the physician beside him. He raised one hand. "For the record, Miss Carter was the first person who tried to help me." Alexander inclined his head, then turned back to Emily. "There is one more truth that must be addressed." He closed the journal. The golden writing vanished, but the warmth of it remained in the air. "Your great-great-grandmother asked that your family live freely. I failed to understand that freedom requires more than distance. It requires protection from those who use invisibility as a weapon." Emily studied him. "What happens now?" "You decide." The answer came without hesitation. "You may leave this manor with full compensation, protection for your family, and no obligation to return. You may remain in your position under new terms chosen by you. Or you may accept a place as official keeper of the peace records, with authority independent of the council and the crown." The room reacted at once. Emily barely heard it. "You would give that authority to a maid?" asked one nobleman. Alexander looked at him with cold patience. "I would give it to the woman who uncovered a conspiracy while the rest of us were too proud to see it." Emily thought of her younger sisters sleeping in their small apartment, unaware that their lives had changed before midnight. She thought of Grace speaking despite her fear. She thought of Abigail hiding the journal so a future daughter could choose what kings could not. "I will stay," Emily said. Alexander's eyes softened, but she raised one hand before he could speak. "Not as your debt, not as your servant. I will stay as keeper of the records, and I will set my own terms." For the first time that night, the vampire king smiled. It was small, almost unfamiliar, but real. "Then we will begin with your terms." The pendant at Emily's throat glowed once, gentle as candlelight. Across Alexander's wrist, the crown mark changed. The thorns opened into 7 stars. Then a bell rang beneath the manor, not as a warning, but as an announcement. Somewhere inside the ancient walls, a second sealed chamber unlocked, and a child's voice whispered Emily's name. The child's voice came again, faint but unmistakable, drifting through the walls beneath the ballroom. Emily Carter. Every candle bent toward the eastern corridor as if pulled by an invisible wind. Alexander's expression changed at once. The warmth in his eyes vanished, replaced by a guarded stillness Emily had learned to recognize. "Who is that?" she asked. He did not answer immediately. Beneath their feet, gears turned inside the manor, and a narrow door appeared between two marble columns where no doorway had existed before. Gold symbols formed across its surface, matching the 7 stars on Emily's pendant. "That chamber has been sealed since 1861, Alexander finally said. "No living person should be inside it." The remaining guests stepped back. Grace moved beside Senator Whitmore, while the physician urged the servants toward the far side of the room. Emily approached the new door. Alexander reached out, then stopped before touching her arm. "You do not have to open it tonight. It already knows my name," Emily replied. "Waiting will not make that less true." She placed the brass key into a small opening at the center of the door. The lock turned without resistance. Cool air entered the ballroom, carrying the scent of old paper and lavender. Beyond the threshold waited a circular room no larger than 20 feet across. Shelves curved along the walls, filled with children's books, wooden toys, and carefully labeled boxes. At the center stood a music box shaped like Blackwood Manor. Its lid opened by itself. A tiny figure turned beneath the glass, and the child's voice spoke from within it. "If the crown has changed to 7 stars, the keeper has returned." Alexander stared at the music box. "Thomas." Emily looked at him. Who was Thomas? His gaze remained fixed on the turning figure. "My younger brother." The room grew quieter. Alexander explained that Thomas had been born human, a secret the royal family had hidden from the old council. He had believed humans and vampires could share power without fear, but he disappeared before his 12th birthday. The court claimed he had been sent overseas. Alexander had accepted the story because grief had already taken too much from their family. Emily stepped closer to the music box. "He left this message for the keeper." Another compartment opened beneath it, revealing a folded letter sealed with the Carter crest. Emily broke the seal and read aloud. Thomas had discovered the same conspiracy Abigail later recorded. He had hidden the original peace charter in a place only the king and the Carter heir could reach together. The charter granted human representatives equal authority in all disputes involving both worlds. Evelyn and her allies had spent generations suppressing it. Alexander's face became paler. Without that charter, the council has ruled through an altered copy for more than a century. Emily unfolded the final page. A map appeared, showing a location 35 miles west of the manor beneath an abandoned courthouse in the Blue Ridge foothills. At the bottom, Thomas had written one warning. "Do not trust the first confession. The true keeper of the conspiracy still stands beside the throne." Emily looked through the open doorway toward the ballroom. Council members, guards, servants, and witnesses waited beneath the chandeliers. Alexander followed her gaze. Evelyn and Victor were not the end of this. "No," Emily said, folding the map. "They were the people we were meant to find first." Then Senator Whitmore rose unsteadily from his chair and removed a golden ring from his hand. Beneath it, the same red council seal glowed against his skin. Senator Whitmore stared at the red seal on his hand, as though he had spent years waiting for someone else to see it. The ballroom held its breath. Alexander stepped between him and Emily, but Whitmore raised both hands and spoke calmly. "This mark does not mean what you think." The seal brightened, then pointed like a compass toward the raised platform at the far end of the room, toward the throne, toward the man standing silently beside it. Daniel Mercer, Alexander's chief guard, had arrived with the king less than an hour earlier. He had served the Blackwood crown for 140 years. He had protected its secrets, commanded its security, and stood close enough to hear every royal decision. Now the red light gathered beneath his polished black shoes. Emily remembered Thomas's warning. The true keeper of the conspiracy still stands beside the throne. Alexander turned slowly. "Daniel." The guard did not deny it. His face remained calm as the room shifted away from him. "I protected your kingdom when grief made you careless," Daniel said. "The original charter would have weakened the crown. It would have required the crown to listen, Emily answered. Daniel looked at her with the same dismissive patience Victor had shown earlier. You are a servant who opened a door she does not understand. Emily held up the brass key. That is why you chose the wrong person to ignore. Senator Whitmore explained that the red mark had been placed on his family generations ago, forcing them to carry messages for the Hidden Council. He had come to Blackwood Manor intending to reveal the truth, but Evelyn discovered his plan. His collapse had been staged to discredit him, while Emily was selected as the easiest person to blame. I am sorry, he told her. I believed I could control the risk. You could not, Emily replied. But you can tell the truth now. Daniel reached inside his coat and pressed a small silver device. Nothing happened. Emily's key had already sealed every signal within the manor. For the first time, uncertainty entered his eyes. Alexander gave one quiet order, and the guards escorted Daniel to a secured room beside Evelyn and Victor. No threats, no spectacle, only accountability. By sunrise, statements had been recorded from every witness. Senator Whitmore's evidence confirmed the journal's records, and the altered peace agreement was placed under joint protection. 35 miles west of the manor, Emily and Alexander entered the abandoned courthouse in the Blue Ridge foothills. Beneath its cracked wooden floor, the brass key opened a narrow vault untouched since 1861. Inside lay the original charter, signed by vampire rulers, human judges, Abigail Carter, and a 12-year-old boy named Thomas Blackwood. Alexander read his brother's signature in silence. Emily stood beside him, not behind him. Later that morning, before representatives from both worlds, Alexander restored the charter and surrendered the crown's power to alter it alone. He then asked Emily to take the first permanent seat reserved for the independent keeper of the records. She accepted on one condition. Every servant, citizen, noble, and king would answer to the same truth. Alexander agreed. The 7 stars on their marks shone once and settled into soft gold. For the first time in 2 centuries, Blackwood Manor opened its gates to daylight. Yet as Emily placed the charter inside its new glass case, Thomas's music box began to play from 35 miles away. His recorded voice whispered one final message through the ancient walls. The peace has been restored, but the missing heir has not.